I'm Alexandra Legouix. This is Mindset Unfiltered. This is a great episode. We spoke about so much. James Elliott is a hugely fascinating and incredibly knowledgeable human and has such a great and positive message he's putting out in this time of uncertainty. We discuss mental resilience, what it is and how to build it, how to self-motivate and why it is scientifically that we struggle with it sometimes. We discuss our brain's response to the current situation with coronavirus and lockdown, and James helps us with how to respond and evolve with this environment of pressure in the best way and not fight against it, and how to ensure a more successful outcome for us, our mental health and our future. Oh, and also we discuss Tiger King and Joe Exotic, because why not? This episode is brought to you by MyZone. MyZone is an innovative wearable heart rate system that uses wireless and cloud technology to accurately and conveniently monitor physical activity. I wear mine every day when I exercise, and I love the amount of information it feeds back to me afterwards, including how many calories I burned, what intensity I worked at, my heart rate, and loads more. It also encourages effort and personal growth as it gives you MyZone effort points, MEPs, that you can monitor and build over the weeks. So it really focuses on rewarding effort rather than fitness. For more details, head to www.myzone.org. And if you do go ahead and purchase one, please do mention my name, Alexandra Legouix. Enjoy the episode. This is James Elliott. How would you describe yourself? You seem to do an awful lot of things.
I do. That's a really good question. How do you describe yourself? I guess there's a standard thing that you write in your bio of your CV, but I guess that I would just describe myself as someone who sort of found their passion. Like, I really love what I do. I love teaching. Not teaching, that's not the word. Mentoring, mental resilience and well-being, because it comes from a place of experience. It comes from when I lacked mental resilience, where I really struggled, where I then learned to develop it, where I then used it in sports coaching, where I then used it in military parachute training. And then when I had this idea about we should have more soldiers teaching soldiers, that we should have credible, experienced, reliable, human soldiers, not doctors or nurses teaching mental health, but soldiers teaching soldiers the skills of mental well-being. And that's what sort of then just exploded me, because I put all that into an email and sent that to Army HQ, and they went, "You've got a very good point, big lad, come on." And they took me out of the parachute training school, and off I went and just started teaching this resiliency and well-being and helped sort of develop the next sort of phase of the product, and then delivered it to the commander of like the field army, chief of general staff, and so many like senior people that they went, "This is brilliant, why is this not everywhere?" I said, "Oh, because there's two of us." It was me and sort of the originator of mental resilience, this Sam Major, and they went, "Well, this needs to go everywhere."
Yeah.
So then I found myself delivering to like all these different units all across the army, like all across the south of the country, and I went to Estonia, and then I wound up with people who I was then coached, so I then became the coach of mental resilience, teaching other people how to sort of engage with soldiers, which is the difficult bit. The course content isn't difficult. It can't be particularly complicated because I do it, but it's not complicated. It's not that. It's getting to engage with people and getting to speak to people and being personable and being approachable and having humour when you need humour, but also having that humanity when you need that humanity, that compassion when you need compassion.
And speaking in a language that they appreciate and understand as well, isn't it, and relate to.
And being that relatable human being, and actually, like it's genuinely been like just it has been the best job I've had in the army. And I've spent 14 years part of the British Airborne Forces, and 14 years so proud of my regiment and who and what I am, but these last couple of years teaching mental resilience, coaching mental resilience, mentoring it has been just the most rewarding. Wow. Even more so than Herrick, even more so than awarding like young guys their British Army para wings. Having paratroopers teaching paratroopers to get their wings was like, I thought nothing would top that. And then I started doing this, and I started helping people who would genuinely really struggling with their lives and genuinely really struggling with things. And it wasn't a case of, oh, I'm so wise and I'm so experienced, anything egotistical like that. It was just a case of, here's how we can set some goals, mate. Here's how we can think positively about this situation. And then these people are now flying or succeeding in what they want to do in life. And they say, oh, you know, like, you really helped me. And you think, well, that's why I do this, mate. That's mega.
Yeah. It's sometimes people just need, even if they don't need a load of help, then sometimes they just know stuff already, don't they? And they just need a little bit of reassurance that their thoughts or their own personal goals or whatever it is that they're working on, no matter how small, is okay. And that's, you know, and there's someone like you that's saying, yeah, that's great. I totally support that.
Yeah. Sometimes it's, with a lot of people, it's seeing the wood through the trees. Like, the answer's right in front of them. Like, I want to go, I really, really want to go and do that, but I'm not fit enough.
Yeah.
Let's get fitter then. I don't know how. I do. I can help you with that. And you set them all these fitness goals, and you set them this strength conditioning program, and they get really fit, and they go and get top student. And they're like, oh, mate, thank you. And you're like, but I didn't really do that. Like, you did that. You got fit. Like, producing what was a fairly generic conditioning program is not, it's not hard. I've done an all-arms PTI course, and actually you knew how to do all that yourself. And the answer to everything that you wanted was right in front of you. Like, you'd say it, or I want to go and do the commando course. I want to be a commando, but I'm not fit enough. That's really solvable. That's really easy. Yeah. But they get this whole thing, like, and we're all guilty of that at times, aren't we? Like, oh, I want to be, I don't know, I want to be leaner, but I eat so much crap all the time. Stop eating crap all the time then. Drink more water, eat healthy. Like, we know how to do it. And as human beings, I find so much resilience, or, yes, an element of resiliency is based around the fact that we just need to be shown the right direction. We just need that little sense of purpose.
Yeah.
That often is right in front of us, but we can't see it.
And presumably sometimes as well, what's lacking is motivation, or understanding what your personal motivation is to achieve that final goal.
Like that intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, and tangible and non-tangible results. So intrinsic motivation is the sort of motivation we all wish we all had all of the time. So we are motivated by us, because we want to do it and it's the right thing to do. And extrinsic motivation in like a military thing is like being told to do it because some absolutely horrendous, hairy sergeant is shouting at you to do it. Like when you're a young recruit, go get in that puddle. I don't want to. Like, no, I'm not asking you. Get in that puddle. Like, okay, yeah, cool. And so you go get in that puddle. That's extrinsic motivation. You talk about tangible and non-tangible results, but the key I've always found to intrinsic motivation is to understand that you are where you are because you put you there. Like, everything is choice. Like, we choose to be where we are. We choose to be who we are. Mm. And so if you're making these choices, like these young lads come to me and they're really struggling, and I've had lads who've passed out, you know, and they're in their regiment and they're struggling with their motivation, they don't want to be there anymore. So it's like, you got you there.
Yeah.
You joined, like I didn't walk you through the front gates in Patrick or wherever it is in their basic training. Like, I didn't walk you through there. Your mum didn't hold your hand through there. Like, you walked through that. Like, I didn't get you through the basic infantryman's course. Like, you did that. And I didn't carry you to your unit. You did that. And you need to take ownership, not just of our failures, because when we fail at something, we blame ourselves. We come in pretty hard. And that is an element of attribution theory there. But we also need to learn to attribute our successes to our effort. Like, people don't do that. People act as if they got where they are by sheer circumstance. But you didn't. Like, you made choices that got you there. You put in the effort. You put in the graft. Like, you designated a whole chunk of your life to achieving what you've got, and you've got it. And at the first sign of adversity and difficulty, and once you've done it, people are so willing to forget that. And I think it's a really terrible human condition where we become so dismissive of our own success. Yeah. Like, I'm not saying be arrogant. I'm saying, like, use your previous motivations to motivate you. Sorry, your previous successes to motivate you to further success.
Yeah.
We don't do that. Right? People become incredible parents, which in itself is a victory, and people become incredible soldiers, people become incredible athletes, people get in great shape, people overcome great adversity, and there isn't even necessarily some sort of external obvious sign that they have overcome some great adversity, but they have. And 6 months later, it's almost like they've forgotten that they've done it, and they become dismissive. Oh, I was lucky. Particularly when I teach and when I coach and mentor with sportsmen, like I do some coaching and mentoring with the Paralympic rowing team. which was absolutely amazing. And, I talk about attribution theory to them. Talk about like the key to their success is understanding that the success that we have now, that how everyone perceives them, is down only about 10% of their talent, 90% of their work rate. Yeah. And we need to change the way the attribution that we have, where it's external. We blame our failures, we attribute our successes to external factors. So we go, oh, I was just really lucky, like the opponent was rubbish on the day, the weather was, all these things, these external things that you're not in control of. People don't want to go, no, I've got this. I've won this medal in Rio because I worked fucking hard for it. Like, I pushed hard. Like, yeah. I set these goals and I smashed them, and here I am with a medal because of it and an MBE because of it. And this is top-end athletes to do that. And yeah, I get these soldiers when I'm doing my mental resilience coaching. They come in, they speak to me afterwards, or they get hold of me via social media, and they don't attribute any of their successes to their effort. No. Like you are a machine gunner in the parachute regiment. You should be brimming with self-confidence. Yeah. But they are when they pass out, and they are when I've handed them their wings in their parachute training school, and they are when they get a medal. But 6 months after that, it's forgotten, and they don't attribute that success to their effort anymore. They attribute it to external things. Say, no, bring it back. Take ownership of your success, and that is definitely what I find with motivation is that people forget to attribute their successes to their own efforts.
I feel like, but we don't take ownership for things that are good or bad. And I wonder whether that comes from, like you say about taking ownership of successes. It's something that's drummed into us as human beings from school, that it's and from schoolmates, that it's arrogant to be proud if you come first and win and be if you're the best in class in maths or whatever, then you'll be alienating yourself. You'll lose friends if you're proud of being in the top set. It's not cool to be good at stuff.
Yeah, absolutely, and the same with, like you said there, with failure. But the attribution theory for that is with failure, blaming it on external factors as to why you failed is a lot about. It's about how to best describe it. It's about ego. Yeah. It's about protecting people's egos. So like an athlete will lose, and actually their coaches. I'm not a massive football guy. I'm too masculine for that. But I'm teasing footballers. But for Alex Ferguson was like one of the famous guys for us. And Man United, when they were at the time one of the best teams in the world.
Hang on, you're covering your mic. We can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Perfect.
So Alex Ferguson, who at the time was one of the great managers and was managing one of the greatest football teams in the world. Like they'd lose the game and he would blame the referee, he'd blame the weather, he'd blame the roundness of the ball. I've got loads of examples of his because he would think it absolutely key to protect the ego of his players. Yeah. So we blame an external factor, but then practice it until it became an internal factor. So blaming the noise of the crowd, blaming the referee, he would then train them and draw them to a standard where the crowd and the referee were irrelevant. Yeah. So it's very clever what they was doing there. So actually, a lot of the time when people blame their failure on external factors, it's about ego protection, which is fine. But then you need to then understand that you can ensure victory by managing internal factors better.
That's such an interesting approach that can be taken into every walk of life, can't it?
Yeah. Like how often do we have an argument with somebody and we're so unwilling to say, I'm sorry, I was wrong? Yeah. Because it's like, even though you sat there and you're like, oh, she has got a quality point. That is undeniably the 5th time this week I've put my sweaty gym t-shirt by the laundry basket and not in it. Like she is 100% right. But you don't want to say, you don't want to admit it. You're like, oh, okay, but that's human nature. We want to protect our egos, and it's I guess it's a form of a survival instinct, not wanting to lose your place in the social hierarchy. Yeah, I would 100%
agree with that. And there's something about, I don't know, maybe you start to feel a little weaker if you're not careful, if you almost batter yourself down a little bit. And
I think almost that's what we talk about with, particularly in British culture, about vulnerability being mistaken for weakness.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's what people are scared of.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I've definitely come across a lot of guys who who've been really, really scared to be vulnerable and in front of me and ask me for come up and say anything. And when I do my mental resilience talks, I talk about sort of my own vulnerabilities, my own mistakes. I am very human. I make it very clear to them that I'm human, and being human means I've made huge mistakes, and I've got vulnerabilities, and I've got insecurities, and that's fine. That's what makes us human. And actually, by being vulnerable and exposing those to you, what you're not saying to me you're weak. What you're saying to me is you're strong enough to show that vulnerability.
Oh, it's so empowering. Like, once you have the courage to be vulnerable and to let people know that you're vulnerable, it's the opposite of weak feeling when you actually do it, isn't it? There's something really empowering in taking that step and even saying to someone, God, I'm really struggling right now. I really could do with a hand. It's incredible.
So what I always say when I do about active listening, so one of the best things you can do when somebody does open up to you and somebody does expose a vulnerability is start off by thanking them. Because actually it's a massive credit. If someone turns to you and goes, Jim, look, this, and explains something to him, I go, oh, mate, thanks for telling me.
Yeah.
Thanks for letting me know. Right, here's what we can do. And then sort of guide them towards sort of ownership and treatment of the issue, of the problem, of whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. And it is beautiful, and it is an great honour when somebody opens up their vulnerabilities to you. But the first thing everybody needs to do is thank that person. Thank you for telling me, because it's scary. And particularly anybody's background this day and age, but particularly sort of the environment in which I sort of grew up in, if you were. Like, I joined the Airborne Forces in 2006 as a young 18-year-old boy, and that sort of environment, like, that just wasn't done. Like, we didn't talk about our vulnerabilities, we didn't. And actually then when I had my mental health issues, sort of 2015, 2016, when things started going really wrong for me, like, the regiment couldn't have been more supportive, and the people around me couldn't have been more supportive. And it was amazing to see. And I thought, all this time I've been really worried about them catching on and them seeing things and them noticing things. And they caught on and noticed some years ago, and knew something wasn't right a long time ago. And then it all came out. And it was like, I exposed that vulnerability, and I got treated with so much respect, so much compassion, that I was like, that was a lot easier than what I thought it was going to be.
100%. I mean, there's been a really big movement, hasn't there, God, I tell you what, like 90% of my interviews for this podcast has been with guys who have learned that communicating has completely changed their life. I mean, there's been such a huge movement in men's mental health, and those statistics of suicide being as scary as they are. I think it's 1 in 4, isn't it? That suicide rates for men. And that movement is just incredible. How much people, or guys and girls, but that men are realizing that actually opening up and communicating that they need a bit of help is definitely making a difference.
I 100% agree. And I think I was talking about this, and I'm looking into it about what we can do to develop it, but the next steps. So we do a lot of mental health awareness, right? And I think that everybody in this country, everybody with a social media account is very aware that men's mental health is becoming a far greater highlight and a far greater issue in the modern world. I don't think anybody denies that. I think what we need to do now is to educate, first of all, active listening skills. We need to educate on communication, and we need to educate on signposting, because we're also aware of mental health, and yet what training is there that's so available to people? Like, if you can't get yourself on a mental health first aid awareness course, what is out there? So why can we not teach active listening in the workplace? Why can we not teach conversations with vulnerable people in the workplace? Why are we not doing this as part of continuous personal and professional development in these huge companies? Why can we not do more about this, about how to communicate, and importantly, how to signpost people to incredible agencies like the Samaritans, like amazing agencies that we can utilise. I'm not saying they're not being utilised. Like, certainly the Samaritans are inundated at the moment, but we can learn to communicate better now. Now that we're all aware, right, this is the issue. By the way, everybody, there's a huge issue, and there's been some amazing work done to highlight that issue. Right, what's the next step? Right, education. There's always education. Educate people on how to communicate. Educate people in mental resilience. what is mental resilience? How do you be more mentally resilient? What key psychological skills are there, and how can you use and how can you develop them? And that's what we're not doing.
No.
And that's what I think is the next step.
And I think that needs to be implemented from junior school.
Yeah.
That's the time to is for it to be something that's part of the curriculum. It's amazing that we spend all those years at school not learning about those fundamental things.
I would argue as well, though, that kids are at school 9 till 3. So what's that, 6 hours? So that for 18 hours, they're with the mum and dad. Their responsibility of the mum and dad. Now, I know mum and dad have to work. Of course I do. Like, I've got a little girl. But it worries me that the first thing that people go, they should be getting taught this at school. No, what they should be getting taught at school is a wide range from English, maths, science, art, drama, at a very basic and sometimes quite obscure level. And kids, therefore, have then got a great evaluation or a great spectrum of education for them to pick their subject from. You shouldn't be learning about mortgages and mathematics, or you should be learning about relationship and life skills in a life skill PHSE lesson. Mum and dad should be teaching you how to save your money, should be teaching you mindfulness, should be teaching you stress management. And it's unfair, I think, to place all of it on the schools. But I do understand there's elements of it that needs to be taught in schools, like the if we are actually going to almost sort of give a accreditation to it, to say, right, you've now passed this bit, you can now do conversation with vulnerable people, and there needs to be more mental health awareness in school, absolutely. But it's not solely the responsibility of the school, it's the responsibility
right.
the parents need to take ownership as well. But again, like, it's so difficult this modern age, and actually that's one of the good things to come out of this COVID-19 is we're all isolated together and we're reconnecting.
Oh yeah.
Like, the first time in so many years, families are actually sitting down to eat together and talk together and communicate and laugh together, and people finding out who they are. And I bet mums and dads are sharing some great stories with their kids, and kids are finding out who their mum and dad really are, because they don't see them during the day, because 9 to 3 they're at school and the parents are at work 8 till 6, and they're coming back, they're eating. Mum and dad have got exercise, fizz that they need to do for their mental health. They've got extra work to do, kids to put in bed. Everyone's moving 1,000 miles an hour, and they're probably now finding out that their dad was a really good footballer or a really good boxer back in the day, and the mum was a dancer or a musician, and all this like really brilliant stuff, and they probably never knew about. And that's like the beautiful thing from this. So I hope from this that we learn the importance of education at home, not homeschooling, but home education. The stuff that, like, how we sit down and communicate as a family and as a people and as a society, the importance of friendship and the importance of a close family unit. When you talk about your tribe all the time in mental resilience, the people that you choose to surround yourself with are the people that can either elevate you or destroy you. And actually, I think we're learning the importance of that, the importance of communication with your tribe, the importance of surrounding yourself with people who love you. It stands you in a far greater chance to fill you with confidence rather than distrust of the people that are almost definitely going to ensure your victory, and the importance of doing that.
For sure, I think so much positive will come from this situation. Like, I totally appreciate, and I've had, a death of someone that's fairly close to me as a result of this, and I absolutely empathise and sympathise with the vulnerable and the people who have genuine concerns about, people who are vulnerable around them. But exactly as you say, the opportunities that this situation is presenting itself with for people to connect, and I think, just to learn a little bit more about yourself and learn about how you survive in, what we are considering a global situation. The amount of sort of scaremongering and stuff that's going on is incredible. There have been so many things that I'm utterly fascinated by about the whole situation. You wrote a brilliant article in what's it called? The Tactical Athlete, yeah, about this sort of mindful resilience. Talk us through that a little bit more.
So the Tactical Athlete one was about what we can learn from our ancestors, and the sort of the mindset that they would have would be so resilient. So they lived in a time when you're getting eaten by saber-toothed tigers or trampled by mammoths and savaged, and so their stress response is very much a very acute stress response. So they get this sudden rush, the engagement of their autonomic nervous system and their sympathetic and then parasympathetic nervous system, and they would react to this stress. So this, oh my God, there's a saber-toothed tiger. Instant release of energy, okay, to make them fight, flight, or run faster, to make them move quicker. They'd be stronger. There'd be greater circulation of the blood, a huge rush of adrenaline, and they would make a decision. And that was what the stress response was designed for. Now, that was, we emerged from the jungles in Central Africa like 2 million years ago. So the sort of the world and society that we've got now, let's just say for the last 2,000 years, is a blink in the eye of the lifespan of humanity. And actually, we need to identify this stress response, why it is we have it, and how to use it better than what we are using. Because at the moment, we get like a nasty email, we get somebody saying, they've cut the word kindly out of their, kind out of kind regards, just regard, and you're like, oh, I've upset them. So we're having this stress response. We're sat at the computer, we're having a stress response, right? And we're sat there and we're eating rubbish food and you're drinking rubbish drinks and you're having this stress response. Now, this stress response, one of the things it does do is it mobilizes energy. So we're eating rubbish, we're putting rubbish into the body, which is stressing our body out, and we're having this stress response. And then we're doing nothing. We're sitting there. We're sitting there and allowing this energy to mobilize, having this stress, all this pent-up energy, all this pent-up mood, and we're not doing anything with it.
Yeah.
We're just, I take a breather, I'll count to 10. Whilst you're caveman, this very central part of your brain called the amygdala is kicking off, and it's saying, react to this. Like, this is a threat. Do something about this threat. Either run away or fight it. But we don't. We breathe calmly. We go, oh, no, I'm not saying that the moment your boss sends you a vicious email that you should go and drag him outside. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that we need to find a way to manage this stress better, because we're mobilizing this energy, like I said, which is getting stored then as visceral fat, and we're eating all this rubbish that's getting stored as fat. We're stress, until it all gets too much. We have this like overload of stress. And actually, when we do have this huge overload of stress, there's another central part of the brain known as the hippocampus, right? And that helps regulate our emotions, and actually it becomes smaller. It decreases in size with huge amounts of stress. And there's a lot of things that cause our stress, like eating rubbish food, terrible night's sleep, terrible relationships, all these different things that cause us stress, and we're not doing anything with it. So what I'm saying is actually, let's take a lesson from our caveman ancestors. Like, you should be going to bed exhausted. Like, you should be training hard. You should be throwing weights about. You should be sprinting up and down. I get that it's really difficult at the moment to train, but sprinting up and down where you can, running about and lifting things and running, like, you need to train like you're a caveman trying to fight a saber-toothed tiger. And you need to like remove the stresses in your life, remove the things that cause all the stress. And actually, like we said, it's a beautiful thing about this. I was saying to the better half that one of the great things about this is I'm not privy to gym politics anymore. Like the people who've fallen out aren't speaking to each other, or he's been texting her, or she's been texting him, and all that nonsense. Like that's not a stress in my life anymore.
Yeah.
And my good friends have been FaceTiming me, we've been speaking, we've been chatting. Like, I'm in a little running group where we FaceTime each other while we're running along. So it's like we're all running together. Mm-hmm. It's all very funny. But all of like the little silly stress things aren't a part of my life anymore. Mm. I'm waking up early, I'm going for a run, I'm coming back, I'm drinking my coffee, and I'm eating my healthy food, and then I'm sitting in the garden, I'm studying, I'm using my brain, and all of these things, realise how irrelevant they are. And
so true.
Take from our ancestors and actually just remove the relevant things, because clearly we can survive without them.
Yeah, 100%. Things that may have been really, really important a month ago literally don't exist anymore. So how important were they a month ago? I think also as well, like, I think it's forcing people to, I think people mistake how to be happy by feeling like that means you have to put things in, and you have to add, and you have to buy more things, and you have to go out to more places and eat better food and all of those things. And you don't. Like, your baseline is happy. We were born happy. That is who we are. It's just that we download a load of shit that makes us unhappy. And now we're actually being forced. Okay, so while, going for dinners and stuff, may have been making me, sort of superficially happy, it was making me unhappy that I needed to earn more money to buy more clothes for those things, or whatever, as superficial as that even. We're now back in total basic level, and most people, I think, are probably happier with this more simple outlook. And if they're not, then I think that maybe a shift of perspective is something that is really, really important right now. And finding the pleasure in the little things, because that's what life is making us do.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right that we add the stimuli that cause stress to our lives.
Yeah.
It's very, and actually you tend to find when stresses are thrust upon people, they're actually far better at coping with them. So we've got allostasis and allostatic overload. Allostasis is the way that your brain, your neurons will adapt themselves to stress that's put on them. The way that they communicate, they actually become more efficient at communicating. So you place under stress, there's an allostatic response within the neural patterns within mainly within the amygdala, so the emotional center, with the limbic system, the emotional center, which includes the amygdala, and the hippocampus that we talked about earlier on. Mm-hmm. Now, when it becomes overloaded with this stress, we download all this stress into it. Like you said, we take all this shit on board, and it creates a crashing and a damaging of the neural patterns within the hippocampus, which causes it to shrink, and therefore we actually have less emotional control, and hence why people are very stressed, have like huge mood swings. It's because it's very, very difficult to control that. But actually, if we remove all these stimuli, which we have them, and forced to remove all these stimuli, remove, and we're left with the very basics, we cope very well because we're designed to cope very well with that.
Totally.
And actually that happiness is therefore generated from within, from the very basics that we need. It's not added stimuli to cause us happiness. It's not added pressure and added stress to the hippocampus, to the amygdala. It's just happiness. It's no stress about it. It's enjoying sitting in the sun, drinking water, being healthy, hydrating, laughing with the people around you and sharing with the people around you, enjoying life. And actually the things that, particularly like when I speak to people who really suffer with anxiety, the things that cause them anxiety aren't things necessarily from within. It's the external things that they are expected to do that creates that anxiety. But now you remove that anxiety is no longer an issue. Yeah. Because this isn't making them anxious. Sitting at home isn't necessarily making them anxious. It's the external stimuli that has made them anxious. So we remove that entirely. And actually, the one thing that we have yet to remove, and I think I'm really hoping now that the people all across the country, all across the world, are going to realise for what it is media, and how that is the one thing that is still the external stimuli that is causing all of this stress. And I think that's the one thing that we need to remove. And like the news needs to go back to what it is, which is notable events, whether in sport. That's what news is. Yeah. Like, can we go back to that, please? Like, I do not need a constant, 24-hour news is terrible. I do not need a constant update about how coronavirus is going to kill us all.
No, I totally agree. Imagine if I was saying this to my mum a couple of days ago, who, she is a vulnerable person, so I totally get her fear. But I'm like, if you were every single day for an hour a day, at least, you were told how many times, how many people were killed by a car that day. You wouldn't go anywhere near a road. You wouldn't walk. Or how many people were, how many people were killed from the normal flu or any of those things. If you were told that every single day and actively sat and watched the news to get that information, you wouldn't live. You wouldn't do half the things that you're doing. So why is it that we're like, I just think exactly the same. I think that people need to really limit how much news, get the headlines, be informed, but don't, it's so bad for the brain, isn't it?
Yeah, it isn't. And people think it's a way to stay in communication with other people, therefore they think it's a good thing. And because someone wears a suit and calls himself an expert doesn't mean that what they're saying is opinion free. Yeah. Like, everybody has an opinion, so everyone's going to sit there who's going to push their own agenda. And just because someone is a doctor doesn't mean that they're not on telly speaking that fashion because they just really want to be on telly. Like, they're still human beings. They're still very, very flawed human beings, as we all are. So we're seeing someone on the news going, this is the worst, da 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 da, and then you see them on 3 different news channels, and then you think, how come I've not heard from him before today? And because he's not a good doctor, he's not well respected, but he's got a very strong opinion on this, and this is what, and bad news sells, and this is what a media outlet will understand, and they know people are going to watch, and actually they're running out of experts who are agreeing with him, so we'll get him on, because, and it perpetuates, and people see this guy in a suit saying, oh, everything's terrible, it's all going to end, and then people buy that. You know, I don't know whether or not the whole world is going to end, none of us do, and actually, if none of us know that, then there's nothing we can do about it anyway.
No, so it's funny that I think this is also forcing that people are panicking about the fact that we're thrown into this unknown without realizing that we are always in that unknown state. We never know what's going to happen.
Well, again, it ties back into that blog that I was for the Tactical Athlete about prehistoric man. Like they didn't know nothing. Like they didn't know. They didn't know what that big yellow thing in the sky was.
No.
They didn't know what on earth they were standing on. They didn't know anything about, like, you know, someone got a cold there, they dead, see you later. And they had no idea about that. They had, you know, it was just an awful time. They had no idea what was going on. Like, no idea. And yet, we're still here because they were still there. They survived. Yeah. It's really simple. You survive because you can only attack what's in front of you. You can only deal with what's in front of you. And if you're going to sit there and overthink about things that are, as we've talked about, all those irrelevant things, and you're just going to get yourself caught up. You are going to become overwhelmed with your anxiety. You become overwhelmed by day-to-day living, not even living in any kind of adverse conditions, because you'll sit there and you'll think. And it's the human condition, because we are conditioned to constantly look for threat, because we're conditioned to survive, because as a society we've evolved far quicker than we could ever physiologically evolve, particularly in our brains. Like, it takes millions and millions of years. So we are evolving at a pace far quicker than our brains can keep up with. So we're scanning for this danger. Where's the next threat? Where's the next threat? Where's the next threat? And now this media is constantly blasting at us. Where there's threat here, there's threat here,
here it is.
There's threat now. We're getting overwhelmed. Stop. Just turn it off. That's your inner caveman. Vent him. Run about. Sprint about. Vent this stress energy, and go back to the simple living. Spend time with people who love you, and do healthy things.
So true. I think even, well, I mean, I think I'm worked out that I'm actually not quite as sociable as I thought I was. But I mean, also, it's only been 3 weeks, and I quite often don't see friends for 3 weeks, and I quite often don't see or speak to people for 3 weeks. You know, it's fine. Yeah. Like, there's also that panic that's going on. Like, I don't need to be on house party every night socializing, because I wouldn't have been doing that anyway. I can do without 8 people talking to me at once for another week or so. You know, it's strange, this like panic thing that we're doing as well, and then you almost feel guilty if you don't want to be sociable suddenly. Like,
I
don't want to.
And I think that picking those people is key. So there's a social learning theory that says that we are the product of the 5 people we spend the most amount of time with. It's more of an interactionist, but it's a social learning. So we are the product. And actually, then, if you think about that, you think about the people who you spend the most amount of time with. If you can identify one of those who's actually a really negative effects in your life, whether or not they speak really negatively, or whether they've got really negative opinions and views, or whether or not they're just a fake friend, a bit like, was it frenemy? Someone who, they're the people who don't clap when you succeed. And then you think, actually, do you know what? Maybe that's a toxic part of my life that I do need to remove. Maybe that affects my resiliency. Maybe the self-doubt I've got of my inability to attribute my successes to me is because this person tells me that I was lucky. Or this person says, you were lucky you got the timing right, or it wasn't that difficult, or this is a person that doubts me. And quite often it's somebody who's very close to us, which is the sad thing.
Yeah. Gosh, that's quite enlightening, isn't it?
Yeah. Actually, like, if I sit down and I regularly assess the 5 people who I spend the most amount of time with, and do I want to spend more time with those people?
Yeah.
And it's savage in a way, but it's also essential. And there's people who you'll always love and you'll always care for because they're your family. But as well, you need to be aware that you need to distance yourself the amount of time that you spend with that person, because it does affect your resiliency. Because they plant that seed of doubt in you all the time. And I think the great thing about this is we're spending so much more time on our own. It's given us a great opportunity to work on our self-growth.
Yep.
And actually a great opportunity to people to sit and to read and to learn. And for those people with kids, young, like, unfortunately, I'm separated from my daughter at the moment, and I'm counting down the days till I can get my hands on her again. But people with kids, like, the greatest way to learn a subject is to teach it.
Yeah.
So if you're unsure about the Spanish Armada and how on earth Elizabeth I managed to get around that one, a great opportunity to learn about that would be to teach the kids it.
So
Great
true.
opportunity to learn these things. You have to learn about mindfulness. What is mindfulness and how can it help me? Well, teach kids, because that's a great way of learning a subject, is to teach it.
That's really good advice. I think that there's an awful lot of... there are like two schools of thoughts on this, in my brain anyway. So there was this post flying around on social media saying that if you haven't come up with your side hustle and done something with this time productive, then you don't have any excuse, because it's not like you didn't have time for it. And then equally, on the flip side, there's another post that's gone round saying, kind of cross that specific post out, saying, actually, it's okay that if you don't come up with your side hustle and make fortunes during this time, that's also totally fine, because you're allowed to take a step back and enjoy the simple life. And then equally, I'm like, well, whatever you do at the moment, I think that if people sort of, I'm almost supporting both thoughts in the whatever it is, that I think that people need to try and enjoy how life is at the moment. So whatever it is that they're doing, rather than waiting for when life resumes, make this time best it can be for you. Whether that is creating your side hustle because that's what you feel like you've wanted to have time to do and haven't had time to do for the last 2 years or whatever. And if it's not, then if actually what your side hustle is maybe being a little bit more creative or reading more books and educating yourself, then this is your time to do it. Like, either way, I think that the ultimate side hustle is how to make this time right now that you're living in, the present moment, more enjoyable for you. That will then be a future gain, because it's something that you're going to continue with and not something that you're seeing as, so this is what I'm going to do for a month because that's how I'm going to get through it. I don't have a choice. And I would totally agree with yours that the three school of thoughts almost, that there's, this is your time now. You want to find out. You've got to do this. You've got to do that. And if you don't, almost like virtue fascism, like totally.
if you need to do this now, and if you don't, then
you're rubbish. You're
a waster and a loser, and da da da. And there's people who work so insanely hard that the idea of this, just like a few weeks where they can just pump the brakes and sit down. Just like, yes, please. Like, yeah, perfect. So, yeah, absolutely. Then there's those saying, like, no, that's wrong. Just please find yourself, just enjoy the time and relax. And actually, I think the truth isn't necessarily in the middle. The truth is to whatever side of that you fall.
Yeah.
And that's not a black or white. There's a whole spectrum within there. So you can do a little bit more studying and develop your side hustle a little bit more. And you can spend a few extra hours in bed and you can snore and you can rediscover your love of lions. Or there are people who will absolutely now need to use this time to be productive. And it comes down to perspective, it comes down to context, it comes down to who you are as a person and what it is, most importantly, you want to do. And I think the most important thing is that we leave this happier. That's the key.
And having learned from the experience as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you just want to fall back in love with reading novels and having lions in bed and you want to find out what your perfect bedtime snack is, then do that. Now's your time to do it. If you want to graft and take this opportunity to get ahead of where you were, potentially get 10 years ahead of where you were in the 6 weeks of quarantine that we could have, then yeah, amazing. But don't judge other people if they haven't done what you've done. We're all on a different pathway. and we're all different people. And some people just want to enjoy themselves, just want to use this opportunity now to spend the time with their kids.
What are you doing with the time that's different?
I'm doing more writing. I'm doing more blogs. I'm doing more videos. I'm doing more Zoom calls and chats. You know, if I was doing my mental resilience, I'd be up at silly o'clock in the morning and back later at night and exhausted. And I'd drag myself to the gym. I'd pump some iron. I'd eat my protein-rich food, and then I'd pass out on my bed and crack on. And actually, I've just really enjoyed just being able to sit. You know, I'll read articles and read. I'm not really a big story reader, but, you know, read. And I ordered my Guinness World Record certificates, and I've got my World Record certificates through. And I've done loads of learning and little Skype calls with doctors, and it looks like I'm going into partnership with a doctor, which is just amazing. So yeah, like I've really enjoyed not essentially working on my side hustle, working on my business, but working at it in a pace that I'm really enjoying, and actually just being able to take my foot off that accelerator, which, you know, was pretty close to burnout at times, and work on me and my sort of civilian business as I'm on my way out of the military this year. Great time to sign off. But yeah, on my way out, and I'm really like looking forward to it. Really excited, and this has been a bit of a blessing in disguise. You know, I was worried as much as people, and, you know, I lost someone a couple of days ago, and it's all very difficult, especially for his really close friends and family. But it is what it is in that sense, and all what I can do, you know, is help those people and keep doing this and I'm doing a lot of mentoring over the phone, a lot of messages, a lot of video calls, a lot of reading, and a lot of learning, and I'm really enjoying it. And I've started going running again. I'm not a massive fan of running because I'm over 100 kilograms. I'm a big lad, and running isn't always necessarily that enjoyable for a gym bunny who pumps iron. So actually, just to be outside, I don't record my time. I don't record my distance. I don't wear a watch. I don't have some ridiculous Strava app. I just go out in the countryside and I follow this river, and I run down this river out in the countryside. I have to be out really early because I'm so hay fevery. It's pathetic.
Oh no!
And I have to go run. Yeah, just like face on fire. I have to like run down this river and up over these hills, and I just don't record it. I just love doing it. Love being out there, and then I come back in, eat my breakfast, and crack on with my learning. It's a nice way to live.
That's wonderful. My partner and I just went out for, he runs, he's training for a half marathon that I guess probably won't happen maybe this year, but at some point it will. And and I can't run because I've got some problems with my bones, but so I cycle, and I absolutely love it. And I teach so much yoga that actually the cycling for me is my calm. There's no pressure. I don't need to go fast. I'm not in any rush because obviously I'm always going to be faster than someone who's running. So actually it's a really nice leisurely hour. And the same as you, like we're right by the river. Our entire like 20K is along the riverside. If you didn't know what was going on in the world, you'd think it was the healthiest it's ever been because there are so many people out either cycling or running. It's lovely and everyone's very happy. And oh my God, like for sure, when all this is over, I'm going to keep doing exactly that. I've loved being able to have that time to add that into my life. It's been great. Yeah,
it's been amazing. And I found that when you go to the supermarket, there's a lot of sort of people very suspicious and staring at each other. But actually, when I'm out running and it's the early morning dog walkers, and actually, although I dare say one of them might give me a thick ear for saying it, a lot of the people who are out walking in the morning with their dogs are the vulnerable people.
Yeah.
And they're always waving at you from across the path and saying hello. And obviously, I'm always the one I'd get in the mud straight away to get out of their way. And they're always the one saying hello and waving. And
they've lived through stuff. You know, like this is for the people who've sort of, I guess, like, I think I'd be interested to know the science behind this, like the measure of, how you have, what difficulties you've been through in your life and how you deal with them. Because, without meaning to sound like a bit of a dick, like, I feel like I've been through a lot worse than this, like, so this is all right. I can deal with this. This is not a major life issue for me. Even if I were to, obviously losing someone or a member of family would be utterly horrific, but that wouldn't be any different if it was corona or not corona. It would be utterly horrific.
Please carry on, please.
And so I just wonder whether there are people who've maybe never dealt with any hardships or been through any sort of difficult life experiences, as to whether this is putting a lot more stress on people like that.
So when we talk about stress, and I talked briefly about allostasis and allostatic overload. So with allostasis, so when the brain essentially adapts, evolves, develops to resiliency, which is always quite interesting, because people seem to think that people who are mentally resilient are those who can keep going and stay steadfast in the face of adversity. But actually, the overwhelming evidence suggests that isn't true. It's actually the ability to adapt to stresses and adversity that make you rise on top. And we always say this, that the animal that rises to the top of its environment, of its food chain, isn't necessarily the biggest or fastest or nastiest animal in its ecosystem. It's actually the one that evolves best to change, the one that adapts the fastest, rises to the top of its ecosystem. And it's very much similar with human beings in face of adversity. So the brain's ability to adapt to that and create that allostasis strengthens up the hippocampus and the amygdala. So the hippocampus, which is part of then emotional regulation. So we are better able to regulate our emotions, we're also better able to reason with them in our prefrontal cortex. Now, when people do go through a lot of adversity, they're developing all this really, really strong allostasis response. So the neural patterns are better able to communicate with each other within their brain. They're better able to regulate their emotions. Now, there are other factors that will degrade the hippocampus, degrade people's ability to regulate their emotions. So, for example, smoking, alcohol, poor nutrition, poor sleep, all of that degrades on our ability to regulate our emotions. But if we're that generation, like you said, they have lived through so much, we talk about people who have lived through the war, who have great austerity measures, far greater than the ones that we know. They've lived through genuine depressions, or people who have who were working in the 60s and 70s before sort of the technological revolution in this country, working with their hands, or maybe they still are the kind of people who go out and work with their hands. They're farm workers, constant adversity from all different angles. But they're staying very physically active, because if you are staying physically active, then the allostasis effect remains. So if you lead a very healthy-ish lifestyle, everything in moderation, including moderation, but you lead a healthy lifestyle and you're physically active and you've gone through a lot, the allostasis, your body's ability to manage stress, is going to be at a very high level. Whereas if you've not ever had to develop any sort of allostasis, this pressure is instantly going to become allostatic overload, which can actually cause trauma. We see that a lot of PTSD patients, that there is a actual significant and noticeable, tangible, different way in which their brain responds to stress and pressure because of that trauma that has been caused. And so there's trauma there, they're very difficult to manage, and they lead very unhealthy lifestyles, which cause like cortisol in the brain, so stress in the brain, because they smoke, because they drink, because they sleep 2 hours a night, and they drink energy drinks and far too much caffeine, and they're lazy in their approach to their health and their fitness and it's, although
it's like a layering.
I'm not a big fan of the word lazy, but it's all adds up to the fact that a huge lack of stress
and a slight self-destruct response, I suppose, as well, isn't it?
Exactly that. Although I hesitate to use the word lazy, but that's not what I mean. But there is always going to be an element of people who are just lazy when it comes to their approach to their health. So anyway, when stress is then presented to them, they have absolutely no allostasis. They have a very weakened hippocampus. They have very weakened ability to reason with themselves, to reason with the stress, and this huge stress response happens, and they can't manage it. So when we talk about these different generations, actually, if you stay on top of your health and you have faced this adversity, chances are as you get to your older in your life, you are going to be very, very capable of managing stress and very, very capable of managing your emotions.
The Queen was wonderful. Her speech the other day, she was like, I've got this. You've all got that too. You'll be fine. You'll be fine.
You know,
Life could be
I
worse.
I felt so inspired.
Me too.
Inspired.
It's about the only time during this that I felt genuinely really quite emotional. I just thought she was brilliant.
Yeah, like everything she says is fantastic, and who and what she represents, I think, is brilliant. She's great, and she's a great monarch, and we're really, really lucky to have her. And I think that she's fantastic, and there are some bloody big boots to fill. And not that she's going anywhere soon. She's brilliant.
She'd be like, yeah, get off me, Corona.
There's one note who one is. I saw a really funny, sent a really funny meme actually, and it's the Queen, and she's someone superimposed a Free Joe Exotic t-shirt on her. And I was like, crying.
I love the fact that there's this shared Joe Exotic thing going on through all this as well.
It's literally like someone like, just imagine like a board meeting at Netflix, and they've gone like, oh yeah, there's a global pandemic, and sort of the head of Netflix has gone, release the tiger documentary. They've gone, fair one.
That's so true. And not only that, but because they've binged watched it all, we need to make another episode to keep people sane.
What you need to do is you need to go back and you need to watch the first episode again. Rewatch that, because like you don't understand the significance of some of the things that people are saying.
That's so
like,
true.
And like because of Tiger King, anytime, because the guy who was sort of originally filming them, who sort of, and it's so worrying when the guy who's constantly got a cigarette and a glass of whiskey in front of him is the voice of reason.
I know.
But like, and he's smoking, and he says his first line is like, it's something like, "You ain't gonna believe this shit." And now when anybody says that to me, I'm stopping whatever I'm doing, because I'm instantly associating those words with a story as genuinely brilliant as Tiger King.
Have you seen the Louis Theroux?
Yeah. So apparently that's on Netflix, isn't it?
Yeah. It's brilliant.
Because I scrolled past the Louis Theroux the other night, but I was like, oh, it's the Louis Theroux he did in 2012, and he goes to Las Vegas, and he goes to the Crosswall.
Yeah.
But someone has mentioned it.
Oh, no. He goes to Joe Exotic, he goes to Joe Stark, he sees them all, meets the long-haired dude that was in Britney Spears' video. Like, it's so funny. And Louis is, like, he's so stoic, isn't he? He was like, to Joe Exotic at the end, he's like, you're always like this, right? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, and you were a cop before? And Joe's like, yep. And he's like, you must have been a really weird cop. And he's like, yep. Weird.
Do you know what, though? Like, there's just so much stuff in it that's like coming out now that when you're watching it, like, you don't even, like, when he's saying, when I think it's episode 3, when Joe Exotic's driving about in a buggy with a skeleton in the passenger seat, and you don't even blink anymore. As someone watching it, just like, okay, yeah, that's normal. Yeah. And that girl gets their arm ripped off, and he pulls on a medic's jacket like straight away. So he's there with like a fake medic's jacket on that he's like bought from a shop, and you're like, he doesn't miss a trick, does he? You give it 10 seconds, and he's got of his next.
Yeah. I love it.
And when he goes into the gift shop and announces that a tiger's ripped a girl's arm off.
I know.
Why would you?
So we were like, why would you tell people that?
A tiger has ripped a girl's arm off. And there's people just like buying tiger key rings, just like, what are you doing? So weird. So brilliant. Funny. Just so brilliant. But, when they talk about those people, you look at it from, and I'm not a psychiatrist, but you look at it and you just think, God, like, you must be like an absolute psychologist or psychiatrist, like wet dream.
Yeah.
Like, there's just so much trauma there. And all those people who are all clearly struggling with their own mental health, they've all congregated together. And for some reason, they've got millions of pounds in a tiger zoo and loads of meth. And it's just so unbelievable. It's... You sat there like, this isn't real, right? This isn't. But no, it turns out it was.
I know. It's unreal. I love the fact that we've totally evolved onto Joe Exotic, Tiger King stuff.
Carol Baskin, go on.
So on let's to wrap up then, what advice, how obviously we are currently in the situation we're in. So if you could sum up what you've learned. Oh, we haven't even touched on your world records as well. Okay, let first say if you could sum up, you know, what your advice as a resilience coach is for this situation for people. What would it be?
There are two types of factors that affect us all. They're internal and external factors. Some of those are controllable, and some of those are uncontrollable. Almost all of the internal factors, almost all of them, are controllable. One of the things that are uncontrollable is emotional reactions. What is controllable is your physical reaction. So if you can identify your emotional reactions, now we all have a physiological response to an emotion. So, for example, anger or fear, generally we can feel our sympathetic nervous system engaged. So we can feel our stomachs tighten. For me, it feels like somebody's got a cold brick and has dropped a cold brick in my stomach. Some people tense up, some people sweat. You can feel that sort of feeling in your stomach. Some people get really tense at this. Some people get really angry. We notice physiological responses to emotions. So if you can identify your physiological response to emotions and you can catch that emotion, you can identify the fact that is just an emotion. I often talk about focus. Feel the emotion, observe it, control it, use it, succeed. So you feel that emotion, that focus, you feel that emotion coming, overwhelming you. Take a breath, observe it. This is just my response to fear. This is just my response to stress. This is my response to anger. This is my response to I'm tired, I'm moody. Like I understand this reaction and I'm observing it, but I can control that. I can control that and I can use it to now push on to my next goal, my next target. I'm really wound up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to crack some fizz. I'm going to go for a run. I'm going to come back. I'm going to clean the house. I'm going to push a hoover around. I'm going to cook myself loads of healthy dinners. I'm going to hydrate. I'm going to use that emotion to succeed. We're all human beings, right? We are all going to have emotional reactions, but how you choose to react to that emotion is what defines you as a person. So my advice is learn to control your emotions. There are external factors which we cannot control. And if you cannot control an external factor, to me, therefore, it becomes irrelevant. You cannot control what other people outside are doing. You cannot control what Boris Johnson is going to say next. You're not going to control what Piers Morgan decides to say next. You can't control any of those things. Therefore, do not become stressed by them. Observe them, see what's going to happen. Okay, cool. And I'm going to control what I can control, which is internal factors. How I choose to react to what is presented to me is what defines me as a person. Control myself, use that emotion and succeed.
I love that. That was very eloquently put as well. Thank you very much, James. Tell us your marathon, your rugby marathon, your world records. Yippee!
Guinness World Record certificate for the longest marathon playing rugby union sevens. 24 hours and 30 minutes was achieved by the Horace Sevens and Whitney Barbarians, both UK, in Oxford, UK, from 28th to 29th of July 2017. And this one, because it only took me 3 years to order it, this one...
I was going to say, you've only just picked them up.
Yeah, but that's not because of them, that's because of me. The longest marathon playing rugby union 10s is 24 and a half hours and 30 minutes and was achieved by Horace Evans and Scottish Little Soldiers, both UK, in Whitney, UK, from 21 to 22nd of July 2019. That was last year.
Wow. So you've done them 2 years apart. So have you got another one next year?
Got a potential one this year.
Okay, go on.
So I'm carrying a stretcher with a team. If you look us up on the Instagrams, we're the Unknown Warrior 100. So I don't know if you know the story of the Unknown Warrior, that it was a soldier who was buried in Westminster Abbey, but the body was taken from a battlefield in northern France called Arms, and he was carried from there, the 123 miles by a horse and carriage stretcher, from there to Westminster Abbey and buried. So I've got a little group of mates together, and we're going to carry a stretcher from that battlefield in France to Westminster Abbey over 4 days. It's that 123 miles carrying a 80-kilogram steel stretcher.
Jeez, that's amazing. And
cool.
Would it be better if it was hot and sunny, or like, because we have quite extreme weather, and right. Do you want it to be? Will it be in the summer or will it be in the winter that you do this?
Winter. So we're doing it to mark the centenary. So it's November the 11th.
Okay.
So it's going to be wet. It's going to be miserable. It's going to keep our body temperatures down. It's going to be manageable.
Yeah.
Like I've done horrendous courses in like my P company, my pre-parachute selection. My pre-para selection course was done in December, and I was running through the ice. Absolutely loved it. Like no dramas there. My selection for special forces was done in the summer, and I didn't pass because the heat just absolutely destroyed me. Like you just, it's too much. So yeah, I would always much prefer doing endurance events in the cold. I always say be bold, start cold. Just get going, you'll warm up. It's easier to warm up than it is to cool down.
Yeah, that's true. People forget that, don't they? I'd love to do something like that. I thrive off. I love that feeling because I don't really feel nerves. I thrive off that feeling of being pushed to my extremes.
You know, the neural patterns for nerves and sort of eustress and stress of competition and anxiety are almost identical. And actually, it's the last moment of just perception in your prefrontal cortex that will decide whether or not you feel afraid or whether or not you feel excited by an event. So actually, that's your conscious choice that you don't feel that anxiety, that nervousness, like, oh my God, I can't do this. But instead, you perceive it as I'm here to perform, which suggests a really strong basis for sport. I'm assuming you've competed in a sport for most of your life.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, and I'm definitely very competitive. So while now I don't compete in sports, I treat everything like I did. And I was talking about this with a girlfriend of mine recently because I grew up as a horse rider, and from a young age it was really instilled in me, be it right or wrong. My mum was probably quite a pushy mum in horsey world, and that sort of atypical. I really wouldn't enter stuff unless I was likely to win it. In fact, I didn't even consider not winning stuff. And that sounds supremely arrogant, but I worked so hard on everything within that realm, not because of my devotion to horses and horse riding, but because of my devotion to winning at something. And whether that was partly me and partly my mum, like nature nurture thing, I don't know. But that's something that's a really strong force that drives me. And it's not beating other people, it's beating myself. It's that competitive thing is if I choose not to do something, or if even if I take it down to like today, for example, I'm teaching 4 hours of yoga. Part of me, the lazy part of me goes, you could just biff off the last class. Like there's only one person booked on. It wouldn't be the end of the world if you just explain to them that you need a break. And the other part of me, that competitive part of me goes, I'm sorry, Legouix. Are you gonna let your laziness win this competition right now? It's only an hour. You'll be totally fine. Like, man up.
Yeah. But I've worked with a few athletes, and actually so many of the athletes, if they they're training or whatever, they don't make a lift or they don't make a pass or they don't make a kick or whatever, and then they talk to themselves. And I'm guilty of that. You know, come on, James, get a grip of yourself.
Yeah.
And actually, it's because they're harder on themselves. That internal locus of character rather than an external. Like, it's not your perception of them that bothers them. It's not your standards that bother them. It's their own standards. And
Definitely.
actually, you see that in a lot of highly successful people. They care more about their own perception of themselves than they do about other people.
Yeah.
There's obviously limitations to that, and there's no such thing as black and white in psychology. But I've definitely noticed that as a trend, and I've got a few more stuff to push out to the tactical athlete, and I don't want to sort of ruin it. But one of them is why losing is for winners, and it's about actually taking that time when you do lose to actually identify what can I improve on, where's my training going, what am I doing right, what am I doing wrong. Because you get 3 choices when you fail. You can quit, you can carry on, or you can carry on wiser, and you can sort of pick a new route. And actually, it's how we choose to carry on. That not only makes us very human, that can actually make us very successful or very unsuccessful.
Yeah.
And that's why losing is for winners, because as Catatonia, a great band in the 90s, for anyone who sort of listens to this and goes, who on earth is Catatonia? But they said the victory is empty, you learn your lessons in defeat. And that's absolutely true of all the successful athletes that I know. they all learn from their defeats to produce far greater victories, and that's sort of an exciting way. Whenever you lose, particularly when it's a total and utter catastrophic loss, it's actually a really exciting time to start again.
Yeah,
better.
Yeah, totally. That is like my ethos through and through, and that word. If people can learn that about themselves, and not have this fear of failure in everything, even down to looking in the mirror and feeling like they've put on too much weight or whatever whatever it is, and seeing that as a failure or something. It's none of it is. It never is. It's never failure. It's always just an opportunity to learn something new about yourself or about the situation.
But then you then have to consider about manipulating that fear of failure. Because fear of failure, it's such a horrible military expression, but it's such a double-edged sword. It's like your fear of failure. So fear of failure can drive people to work so hard that like you saying that there's no way, like you didn't even consider it a possibility anymore. I'm not going to sow my own seed of doubt. I'm here to win, get out of my way. But also that fear of failure can drive people to never compete because they don't want to lose. So actually, when we find people who come from a nurturing, supportive, strong background, like you're saying, about your mum taking you riding, and like actually those people tend to be driven by a fear of failure to succeed.
Yeah.
Whilst those who weren't nurtured as a child, those who actually came from very dysfunctional, abusive backgrounds, we haven't really gone into my childhood, which is a good thing. But I'm not from a sort of nurtured background, and actually that because of that fear of failure can massively undercut people. They don't want to then risk themselves because they don't feel supported, they don't feel nurtured, they don't feel loved, and actually that failure will just compound that really, really negative opinion that they have of themselves already. So it's about learning to manipulate people's fear of failure because it can be such a double-edged sword.
Gosh, that's really enlightening. Like I can, there's a close person in my family actually who has that and almost will avoid doing stuff and will avoid putting things out there for that exact.
Yeah.
And that's definitely something that I believe started from childhood, from a reaction to possibly just too much pressure from his dad, if you like. Yeah, and nurturing is key, and actually overbearing parents driving you towards competition that you don't necessarily want to do. And actually, when we talked about motivation, intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation, like they were extrinsically motivating you to do something you really don't want to do, and then berating you when you don't win at it, because undoubtedly you're not going to continually win at something you don't really want to do because there's not the love and the passion there for you. It doesn't fit into your puzzle of who you are. Then they push that, and actually then that then sort of makes you then reject any sort of form of competition later on in life. And actually that form of competition can come in many forms, from applying for the job that you really want to speak to the girl that you really want, because there is always that fear of competition, and it can manifest itself in the form of insecurities, can manifest itself in the form of anything really, from alcoholism to the real deep-set personal issues because of that overbearingness. And I've certainly dealt with a lot of people with their sort of resiliency and their issues that they're not where they want to be and they're not who they want to be in life, and that's because they've always been told that they can't. And I think actually it's about, and it takes a huge amount of self-awareness and emotional intelligence to then actually be able to turn around and say, yeah, but I am going to do this because fuck you. Yeah. Essentially, and that sometimes that's the best mentality that people can have, and I want to do this for me, and they were wrong and I'm going to prove them wrong. Yeah.
And actually, particularly when I've got guys who are motivated by that because they want to prove there's something more than what people have told them that they are, for me, that's becomes one of the most rewarding parts about being a mental resilience coach, is helping them achieve those goals to prove that they are better than anybody ever thought that they could be. Yeah. And that's sort of a really beautiful thing when you see them do succeed. And I didn't go to prison like my brother, like my father, I got to university and I'm the first one in my family to ever get to university. I got the job, or I got the girl, or I got whatever. I'm now in a happy relationship with this person, and I've got this going on in my life and this going on in my life because I just changed the way that I perceive myself.
Yeah.
That's like a really beautiful thing, I think.
That's amazing. That's so well put as well. So true. James. Thank you very much. It's been so good to speak to you.
It's my absolute pleasure.
Where should people head to learn more about you, or keep an eye?
I don't LinkedIn it. I Instagram it, because I think it's less. It's less clinical. It's more me. It's more my life, what I'm doing. You'll see me having a laugh, and I'll post up stuff about mental resilience, and I'll post clinical stuff, and I post interesting theories, and I talk on there, and I use my experience and what I know about mental resiliency from my time in the military and all that sort of stuff in sport. And you'll see my daughter absolutely terrorising me, and that's on that's James Elliott Official
with 2 T's,
2 L's and 2 T's. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I am that little bit extra. And so 2 L's and 2 T's on there, and that will get you to my profile. That's what I do.
Amazing. I could talk to you for hours, and everything you've said has spurred about 40 questions in each paragraph. So hopefully we'll get a chance to revisit maybe when we are on the outside, or coming out of this process, this journey, this life thing that we're doing at the moment. Then maybe we can catch up again and reevaluate and see how.
Yeah, sounds perfect. I look forward to having more sort of mental resilience stories that we can go through with you. And I will be in full prep then for my stretcher carry race.
Yes, so of course. Oh yeah, I can't wait to see how that goes.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Have a lovely afternoon.
And you.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.